Electronic invoicing is a global phenomenon, with more companies and countries signing up for the services being offered by dozens of providers. But the big question is this: do suppliers find value in electronic invoicing? We'll answer that question and more in this episode of The Savvy Report. Welcome to this episode of The Savvy Report. I'm Ernie Martin. Before we dive in, remember to hit the like and subscribe button so you'll be updated each time we post a new video. Third-party electronic invoicing networks, in its current form, have been around for the better part of 25 years. Companies that make up the current e-invoicing provider landscape include companies like Bassware, SAP Ariba, Tradeshift, Tungsten Network, and more. These and other companies offer suppliers the convenience of submitting invoices to their customers in a way that reduces or eliminates friction in the order-to-pay process. With the ability to submit invoices faster, confirm delivery, and get paid faster, what suppliers wouldn't want to use e-invoicing, right? Well, maybe. When e-invoicing is done successfully, suppliers can enjoy many benefits, including getting paid faster, which is the most important issue for suppliers. So if this is the case, why aren't more suppliers keen on using the service? In our Perceptions Analytics study, we asked suppliers how satisfied they were with the results of submitting invoices electronically. While 93% indicated some level of satisfaction, only about 62% were very satisfied and just over 31% were only somewhat satisfied. So in general, a 93% satisfaction rate is good. But why are only 62% of suppliers very satisfied? And how do these satisfaction levels compare to other invoice submission methods such as paper, email, and EDI? So how does e-invoicing compare to paper? Our perception study shows that 67.8% of suppliers were very satisfied with submitting invoices by paper. That's higher than electronic invoicing, by the way. Well, what if we segment that answer by invoice volume? We see that among suppliers that submit 25,000 invoices or more annually, only 44.8% are very satisfied with paper. By comparison, suppliers that submit only 50 to 100 invoices annually, 70.3% are very satisfied. We can generally conclude that when submitting paper invoices, the more you submit, the less satisfied you become. So now let's see if the same holds true for suppliers submitting invoice by email. So what do we see in terms of suppliers submitting invoices via email? Well, a hair over 60% are very satisfied with email invoice submission, which is a bit lower than the e-invoicing and submitting invoices by paper. For suppliers submitting more than 25,000 invoices annually, 71.6% are very satisfied with email. Alternatively, those submitting 50 to 100 invoices annually via email, 63% are very satisfied. With higher invoice volume, suppliers find more value than one might think with email submission. This isn't the case when suppliers with high volume submit paper invoice because, remember, only about 45% were very satisfied. Let's look at one more method of invoice submission: EDI, or electronic data interchange. EDI has been around since the early 70s and simply provides a one-to-one connection for electronic invoice submission, unlike third-party networks where there is a one-to-many connection. Here we see that just over 94% of suppliers have been satisfied with EDI, and 65.9% are very satisfied. Again, this is just a hair lower than paper invoice submission. But when we segment based on volume, we see that among suppliers submitting 25,000 or more invoices annually, 77% are very satisfied with EDI. But when we segment by those submitting between 50 and 100 invoices annually, over 84% are very satisfied with EDI. Wow. That's very surprising because the assumption is that with a one-to-one connection offered by EDI, suppliers submitting higher volumes would find satisfaction with this method, though there are other things to consider, such as how many different connections are there for suppliers with higher invoice volumes? In short, suppliers find satisfaction with EDI at very high levels, regardless of invoice volume. So why are the methods of invoice submission by paper and email just as satisfying as submitting invoices electronically? That's a good question. And that's a question everyone in the invoice automation field has been trying to answer for a long time. So based on this and previous perception studies, paper and email invoicing continue to provide value for suppliers regardless of volume, for the most part. For a very simple reason, it's easy. Even if large organizations devote a significant portion of their invoice submissions to electronic, they still submit some of their invoices via paper or email. This is a dilemma faced by most e-invoicing solution providers and begs the question how to get more suppliers to transition from paper and email to electronic. I think the answer lies in a few areas. First, e-invoicing solution providers must continue to find ways to simplify e-invoicing for suppliers. This includes onboarding as well as actual submission of the invoice. We know that AP customers are currently driving e-invoicing initiatives within their supply chains. Often, those customers devote more effort onboarding larger, more strategic suppliers rather than many of the smaller suppliers. In addition, many smaller suppliers do not or cannot devote significant IT resources to ensure they connect to third-party networks. So simplifying the onboarding and invoice submission process for the supplier is critical. Second, the interoperability issue needs to be resolved. For suppliers submitting invoices to multiple customers using multiple networks, it becomes a pain to switch from one service to another every time you want to submit an invoice. How can the industry resolve the interoperability issue? Well, the Business Payments Coalition is working to make interoperability a reality with their e-invoicing exchange market pilot. If successful, that could significantly increase the value suppliers receive from e-invoicing, regardless of the invoice volume. And third, simply put, paper and email still work for many suppliers. With these methods, suppliers don't have to think much about it. Sure, there might be the occasional misplaced invoice or problems marrying the PO with the invoice. But for the most part, suppliers know how to deal with it, and it's not a mystery. And what about payment taking a bit longer when submitting invoices via paper? That's a good question too. But often, suppliers make trade-offs. Do they want to address invoicing issues on the front end or the tail end? Not every supplier wants to address it on the front end with solutions like electronic invoicing. Many are fine dealing with it on the tail end because for many, it takes just as much effort as network onboarding. Sometimes it's all about the devil you know. So, are suppliers satisfied with electronic invoicing? The answer is a resounding yes. But they're also satisfied with paper and email, which still make these methods competitive alternatives to e-invoicing. To address this, e-invoicing solution providers must simplify those areas that cause the most pain to suppliers: onboarding and lack of interoperability. Personally, I think they can do it. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Savvy Report. Don't forget to like this video and hit the subscribe button so you can be updated immediately when we post a new episode. And we'll see you next time on the Savvy Report.